At 42, Nova had stopped believing in love. Betrayed by family, bruised by past relationships. She prayed every night just for peace. Until one clumsy encounter changed everything. This is the story of second chances, of learning to trust again, and finding love when you least expect it. Nova sat by the window of her small, cozy apartment, staring out at the city lights that twinkle like distant stars. At 42, she had learned to find solace in the quiet moments, though the weight of loneliness often pressed heavily on her chest. She had been unlucky in love, her heart bruised by relationships that promised more than they delivered. Her family, too, had been a source of pain rather than comfort. Her father, a stern but intelligent man, had passed away 10 years ago, leaving behind a legacy of wisdom but also a coldness that had sometimes made it hard for Nova to connect with him. Her mother, who had died 3 years ago, had been a force of nature, blunt, outspoken, and often difficult, but Nova had loved her fiercely. Nova's siblings were another story altogether. Her brother, the lazy and entitled one, was always asking for money he never intended to pay back. Her sister, the bougie bully, worked in a high-profile law office and had a knack for manipulation that made Nova avoid her at all costs. Trina, her best friend of 30 years, was the only person Nova truly trusted. They had a bond that's unbreakable, finishing each other's sentences and knowing each other's thoughts without needing to speak. Nova sighed, running a hand through her dark, curly hair. She had been praying every night for healing, strength, and peace. She longed for a good, honest, God-fearing man who would be her yin to his yang. But as the years passed, she had begun to wonder if such a man existed. It was a crisp autumn morning when Nova decided to treat herself to a latte at the nearby coffee shop. She had been feeling particularly low, the weight of her loneliness pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. As she stood in line, lost in thought, she felt a gentle bump against her shoulder. "Excuse me," a deep, velvety voice said. Nova turned to see a tall, handsome man with warm brown eyes and a smile that could melt the coldest of hearts. He was dressed in a simple yet stylish outfit, dark jeans and a fitted denim button-down shirt that accentuated his broad shoulders. "No, it's my fault," Nova replied, her voice steady despite the sudden flutter in her chest. She tried to hide her interest, but there was something about him that drew her in. "I'm Devante," he said, extending his hand. "Nova," she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm but gentle, and she felt a spark of electricity at the contact. They chatted briefly, exchanging pleasantries before Devante had to rush off to a meeting. Nova watched him go, her heart racing. She couldn't wait to tell Trina about the encounter. "Girl, you better not let this one slip away," Trina exclaimed as Nova recounted the coffee shop encounter. They were sitting in Trina's living room, sipping on wine and laughing like they always did. "Slow down, Trina. It was one brief encounter in a coffee shop line. I might not ever see him again." "You never know, girl," Trina remarked. "Higher powers are at play here." "I don't know, Trina," Nova said, her voice tinged with skepticism. "I've been hurt so many times before. What if he's just like the others?" "Or what if he's the one you've been praying for?" Trina countered. "You can't keep letting your past dictate your future. Give him a chance, Nova. What do you have to lose? Nova sighed, knowing Trina was right. She had been so guarded for so long, afraid to let anyone in. But maybe it was time to take a leap of faith. Nova left the coffee shop that morning with a strange flutter in her chest. Devante had been charming, his smile warm and his eyes kind, but she had been fooled by charm before. She tried to push him out of her mind, but over the next few weeks, she found herself glancing toward the door every time she visited the shop, half hoping to see him again. Then, one rainy afternoon, it happened. She was rushing in, shaking water from her coat when she nearly collided with someone. Strong hands steadied her, and she looked up into familiar, warm brown eyes. Nova, Devante said, sounding pleasantly surprised. Devante, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. They stood there for a moment, both a little nervous, before he chuckled. Guess we keep running into each other, literally. Nova smiled despite herself. Guess so. They chatted for a minute about the weather, the coffee, how busy life had been, but then Devante checked his watch and sighed. I've got a meeting in 10, but he hesitated, then pulled out his phone. Can I get your number? I'd love to take you out properly. Nova's heart pounded. She wanted to say yes, but fear whispered in the back of her mind. What if he's like the others? Still, something about Devante felt different. So she took a breath and gave him her number. As he walked away, she let out a slow exhale. What am I getting myself into? Devante called Nova a few days later, asking if she would like to join him for dinner. She agreed, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. They met at a cozy Italian restaurant, the kind of place that felt intimate without being overly romantic. The conversation flowed easily, as if they had known each other for years. Devante was kind, attentive, and genuinely interested in getting to know Nova. He spoke about his work as a social worker helping troubled youth and his passion for giving back to the community. Nova found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years, sharing stories about her parents, her struggles with her siblings, and her journey to find herself. By the end of the night, Nova felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Devante was different. As the weeks turned into months, Nova and Devante grew closer. They spent weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and simply enjoying each other's company. But like any relationship, they had their share of challenges. Nova's past insecurities sometimes crept in, causing her to doubt Devante's intentions. There were moments when she would pull away, afraid of getting hurt again. Devante, patient and understanding, always gave her the space she needed while reassuring her of his feelings. There were also external pressures. Nova's siblings, as usual, were a source of stress. Her brother called asking for money, and her sister tried to manipulate her into attending a family event that Nova had no interest in. Devante stood by her side, offering support and encouragement. Nova had been distant for days. After another draining call with her sister, who had once again guilt-tripped her about missing a family gathering, she felt raw and exhausted. Devante had noticed, but he hadn't pushed. Instead, he showed up at her door with her favorite takeout and a quiet smile. They ate in comfortable silence until Nova finally broke. Tears spilled over as she told him everything. The years of feeling unloved by her siblings, the ache of losing her parents, the fear that she'd never find someone who truly saw her. Devante listened, his hand gently covering hers. When she finished, he didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, he said, I get it. And then he told her his story. He had grown up in foster care, shuffled between homes where he was more of a burden than a child. He'd learned early that people could leave without warning, that trust was a risk. But instead of letting it harden him, he'd chosen to help kids like him, working as a social worker, trying to be the steady presence he'd never had. I used to think love was something you had to earn, he admitted. Like if I was good enough, worked hard enough, people would stay. But that's not how it works. Real love isn't conditional, Nova. And you, he brushed a tear from her cheek. You deserve that. Nova stared at him, seeing him, really seeing him for the first time. Here was a man who had every reason to be closed off, yet he had chosen to love anyway. In that moment, something shifted. The walls she'd built around her heart didn't feel as necessary anymore. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. And for the first time in years, she believed that maybe, just maybe, she could let herself be loved. "I'm so tired of being hurt," Nova whispered, her voice trembling. "You don't have to go through this alone anymore," Devante said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I'm here for you, Nova. Always." Nova realized that she had found the man she had been praying for. Devante was everything she had ever wanted: kind, honest, and God-fearing. He was actually, literally, her yin to his yang. Nova had spent years praying for peace, for the kind of love that didn't leave bruises on her heart. But healing wasn't a straight path, and some nights the old wounds still ached. One evening, she found herself staring at an old photo of her parents, her thumb tracing the edges, her father's stern expression, her mother's bold smile. So much love tangled up in so much hurt. Devante sat beside her on the couch, his presence steady. "Tell me about them," he said softly. And for the first time, Nova did. Not just the pain, but the good things too. How her father had taught her to change a tire at 16, his patience outweighing his usual gruffness. How her mother had defended her fiercely when a teacher once claimed Nova wasn't trying hard enough. How, despite their flaws, they had loved her in their own ways. Devante listened, his fingers laced with hers. "Love doesn't have to be perfect to be real," he said. For Devante, healing came in quieter moments, like the first time Nova noticed him flinch when a car backfired outside. Instead of brushing it off, he told her about the foster home where fireworks meant fights, how even now loud noises sent him back to that scared kid. Nova didn't offer empty reassurances. She simply held his hand and said, "You're safe now." And slowly, he believed it. As their relationship deepened, Nova began to heal in ways she hadn't thought possible. Devante's love was like a balm to her wounded heart, soothing the pain of her past and giving her the strength to face the future. For Devante, it was finding new breath. Trusting Nova with his heart was easy. They prayed together, seeking guidance and strength from God. Nova felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years, knowing that she was no longer alone. They built rituals to mend the broken parts. Sunday mornings at Devante's community center, where Nova helped him mentor teens. Seeing him with the kids, patient, encouraging, made her fall in love all over again. Late night talks where Nova confessed her fear of becoming like her mother, too blunt, too much. Devante would kiss her forehead and say, "Or maybe you're just strong, and I love that about you." Prayers whispered together, not just for strength, but for gratitude. for the chance to rewrite what love looked like. One night, as Nova curled against Devante's chest, she realized something. The loneliness that had lived inside her for years had grown smaller. Not gone, but outnumbered. By trust, by hope, by the weight of Devante's arm around her, solid as a promise. He pressed his lips to her hair. "We're gonna be okay." And for once, Nova didn't doubt it. 1 year after they first met at the coffee shop, Devante took Nova to a quiet park overlooking the water. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything. "Nova," Devante began, taking her hands in his, "you have brought so much joy and love into my life. I can't imagine my future without you in it. You are my best friend, my lover, and my soulmate. You saved my heart and God matched your soul with mine. I can't wait to see what the future holds for us together. We were broken, but together we are a whole. I love you more than words can say. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Nova's face as she nodded, unable to speak. Devante slipped a beautiful ring onto her finger, and they embraced, knowing that they had found something truly special. It was perfect. The day was beautiful. They were happy. Nova was happy. Until the wedding invitation arrived to her sister. Her sister, the bougie bully, had sent Nova a text that was passive-aggressive as always. "Would have been nice if you'd bothered to visit Mom's grave with us last week. But I suppose you're too busy with your new family now." Nova's hands shook. She didn't know why she even bothered. She truly hoped her sister would find a second of happiness for her. She hadn't gone because she knew it would be a performance for her sister's social media, not a real moment of grief. But the guilt still clawed at her. That night, she snapped at Devante over nothing, a misplaced shoe, a dish left in the sink, before locking herself in the bathroom sobbing. Devante didn't knock. He just sat outside the door and said, "I'm here when you're ready." When she finally emerged, red-eyed, he pulled her into his lap on the floor. "Tell me," he murmured. And she did, about the guilt, the anger, the fear that she'd never be free of her family's hooks. Devante wiped her tears with his thumb. "You don't owe them your peace," he said. "Not your brother's greed, not your sister's drama. You get to choose who stays in your life." "But what if I'm just running away?" she whispered. "Or what if you're finally choosing yourself?" He kissed her temple. "If your siblings come, they come. I would love to meet them, but if they don't come, that's a special memory lost to them, but either way, I've got you." The morning of the wedding, Trina found Nova pacing in the bridal suite, twisting the fabric of her robe in her hands. "Spill," Trina said, handing her a mimosa. Nova took a shaky breath. "What if I mess this up? What if I turn into my mom, all sharp edges and no softness?" Trina snorted. "Girl, please. Your mom loved hard, even if it came out sideways. And you?" She cupped Nova's face. "You've spent your whole life trying not to be like her, but here's the truth. You got her strength without the bitterness. That's why Devante loves you." Nova blinked back tears. "But what if?" Trina cut her off. "You've been waiting for this man your whole life. The one who sees your scars and doesn't flinch. The one who chooses you every damn day." She squeezed Nova's hands. "So walk down that aisle and claim your joy. You've earned it." Nova exhaled, the weight lifting. For the first time that day, she smiled. Also that morning of the wedding, Devante stood alone in the groom's suite, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. His reflection showed a man who'd come so far, but the boy from foster care still lived in his bones sometimes. What if I'm not enough? The thought hit him like a gut punch. He'd spent his life building stability, but love was different. Love meant trusting someone to stay. A knock came at the door. It was Marcus, his mentor from the community center and now his best man. "You look like you're about to bolt," Marcus chuckled, then paused. "Wait, you're not, are you?" Devante rubbed his neck. "Nova deserves more than what I come from." Marcus sat him down hard. "Listen, you think that woman doesn't know exactly who you are? She chose you, Devante. Not some fantasy. You." He pointed to Devante's chest. "The man who shows up every damn time." Devante exhaled sharply. The truth settled over him. Nova had seen his cracks and loved him anyway. Under the flower arch, Devante took Nova's hands, his thumbs tracing her knuckles. "Nova," he began, voice rough with emotion, "I spent years believing love was temporary. But you made a home in my heart so steady I stopped waiting for you to leave. You taught me that real love isn't about being perfect, it's about showing up." He slid the ring onto her finger. "I vow to show up for you every day for the rest of my life." Nova's tears spilled over as she clasped his hands. "Devante, I used to think love had to hurt to be real. But you," she laughed through her tears, "you loved me so gently I forgot to brace for impact. I vow to be your safe place, your always." When they kissed, Trina cheered loudly from the front row, and even Nova's sister and brother were there. She dabbed at her eyes. She even smiled. Her brother let out this whoop and a cheer. Somewhere beyond the crowd, Nova liked to imagine her parents smiling. Not perfect, but present. And as Devante spun her into their first dance, Nova realized this was what healing felt like. Not the absence of scars, but finding the one who treasures them as part of your story. Nova's story wasn't about finding a perfect love, but about finding the love that was perfect for her. The kind that doesn't erase the past but heals it. The kind that stays through doubts, through scars, through every bump in the road. Because real love isn't about luck, it's about choice. The choice to show up, to try again. To believe that even after years of heartbreak, you still deserve a happy ending. Perhaps this was the answer to all those whispered midnight prayers. Not a flawless love, but a resilient one. Not a hero to erase her past, but a partner to walk with her toward redemption. And in Devante's arms, Nova discovered the holiest truth of all, that even the most wounded hearts can become sanctuaries. And if Nova can find hers, maybe, just maybe, yours is out there too. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thanks, Mishmashers.